and how to and
Okay,
the comment will have them.
some more signals,
And either one.
digital modes, where we're actually going to send digital data, like we talked about with packet, instead of voice or analog like TV. And packet radio was essentially one of the first digital modes uh, because it used the frequency shift keying to represent ones and zeros to send a packet of information, message. Um, if you're familiar with Wi-Fi, which is IEEE 802.11, that's actually a packet mode. Uh, Probably the most popular digital mode today is FT8. Uh, it's named after two guys, Frank and Taylor. Uh, and the eight means it uses eight tones to represent a symbol. So you can represent uh, three bits of information. It's probably the best for weak signal contacts outside of things like echo for moon bounce. It was developed by this guy named Joe Taylor uh, for doing deep space communications. So they used a lot of those same algorithms to develop what's called the WSJTX software, which is weak signal Joe Taylor version X. And it has FT8, FT4, WSPR, I believe PSK31 is part of it, Meteor MSK 144. Gosh, there's probably four or five others I can't remember because I haven't used them. But it's kind of a suite of software, contains all those digital modes. There's similar ones called FLDigi, which is like another suite of different modes. Uh, there's also APRS, which is the automatic packet reporting system, where it sends GPS information along with possibly some other data. It's basically used for tracking. I'm not sure what the current status is. We're putting up a digipeater, which is an APRS repeater up on the VAB, the NASA club. So you'll be able to track mobile people around here. Uh, it shows my hotspot. Of course, it never moves. You can see where it is. Uh, and for all of these modes, you need a computer to generate and to modulate and demodulate the signals. Now, some of the more modern receivers may have, and particularly the kind of open source build it yourself type, uh, have a computer built in, like a Raspberry Pi or a Teensy 41 or something like that, and can actually do it without needing an external computer. In most cases, you're going to need an external computer or laptop to generate the signals and to demodulate them. And there's a lot of calculations, so it takes, I'm not sure you could do it on your phone. I'm not even sure.
Some handhelds have APRS capability,
Right.
GPS, and some handhelds have GPS built in and can connect with the APRS. Communicate with that repeater that we put up on the VAB regularly. They tend to be a little bit more pricey, obviously. But
Which of the following is a digital communications mode?
Delta.
Delta? All right. Okay, so when we talked about packet radio sending messages, and a message could be fairly long, so it may be broken up into multiple packets. Because packets, the way they work, are essentially a fixed length. And they'll have some kind of a sequence number, so you know how to put them back together. So this message might have 4 packets. So you'll have 1, 2, 3, and 4, or 0, 1, 2, 3, depending on where you start. It's possible they could arrive at different points in time. So you could wind up getting packet 2 before you got packet 1. So that's one of the reasons why they embed a sequence number, so you can put them back together in the right order. They can be kind of broadcast and sent to multiple destinations. Can also be used in a store and forward mode. Some of the satellites will do store and forward, where when you're trying to send a packet to somebody that's not within line of sight of the satellite, you can send the message, it stores it until it gets to over position where it can be received by the receiving station. Can also work with a fixed station where you can send a message. Some of the stuff like VAR-AC does it that way, and it kind of puts it in a mailbox. And when you connect, you can check your mailbox and pick up that message. It has a header, which contains the destination address, and that normally includes your call sign. It will also usually at the end contain a checksum. So you have some way of verifying that data is valid. In a lot of cases, it will use what we call automatic repeat request. And if the checksum fails, which is normally for a simple checksum, you just add up all the bits and come up with a number and compare it to the number that was sent along with it. So if the transmitting station sent a 50120 and you got 50120, then you're cool. Otherwise, you'd send an ARQ back and they would resend or retransmit that message or packet. This is kind of a typical packet structure. A lot of stuff in there with the sync pattern and things that are just required in order to demodulate the packet. The data part of the packet is where you've got your application header and your actual data and the checksum. It could have an overall checksum on the frame itself. Which of the following is included in packet radio transmission?
Delta.
All right. There's a few deltas that work. Okay. And we just talked about the ARQ, or automated repeat request, where if the checksum doesn't match, it asks to resend the packet. So what is an ARQ transmission system?
I'm going out on a limb and say Charlie.
Why are you going out on a limb? It's obvious.
Sounds right.
Okay. APRS also uses the packet radio type of format, and it sends location information, normally via GPS. You could have fixed information in there, but it doesn't do much good if you're moving. So for a mobile application, like your transceiver in your car, could send out APRS information if it had a GPS receiver in it. And some of the mobile transceivers do. I know the 5100 does. You can also have text and weather information in addition to location. And one of the things you can do with it is there's some applications where you can actually display a map and show the different station, APRS stations. And like if they're mobile, it'll usually be represented with a little car icon, and you can see them moving around. It'll have the call sign and see their location. If it's like a fixed station, like my hotspot is just got a little house, I think, showing where it is with the call sign.
There's some APRS, people with APRS stations in North Merritt Island. So if you go to aprs.fi, just a web address, just type in aprs.fi, you get a map. So they've got some people that have a weather station, they feed their weather data up on their APRS maps. I just bring that up like I don't have a weather station. So like hurricanes, they're half a mile from me. I can see what the wind speed is and rain amounts by going to
Where is that?
it's aprs.fi. Just bring up a map, but you can just zoom into your area and see who all is reporting APRS information. So
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
so that's one reason I use it. I mean, and then I have the ID 5100 like Bob does, and so that can feed. It's called the PRS on the
Oh yeah, the
function,
digital version.
but it sends the data to
Right.
PRS. So that's our mobile rig. So if we're in the car and turn on the GPS, and we show up on the map, like Bob said. As far as location wise, but there's more than just location data. So that's one thing I use APRS, just looking at nearby weather stations. So it's free and handy to see what they're reading. So have internet.
But one of the key things is real-time tactical and location map.
They use it for
Yeah.
yes, like that search and rescue.
Okay.
A lot of like for people with mobiles that have APRS capability. So if somebody in the control center can see where team members of a search and rescue are located. So to give more guidance on where to go cover, working for someone or something or whatever. So
We're out there to live somewhere. We've got a team out
they
there.
use it sometime for supporting walks and runs, marathons and stuff where. People
Yeah, we've been supporting this
Space Coast.
year before last, well, let's see, 22. Space Force started their inaugural T-minus 10-mile run, and we had some APRS stations on the lead vehicle and the trailing vehicle, and you actually had one runner with a mobile APRS, and we tracked him.
He's so cool.
And then we were all there at the watering stations
I think
giving
you
out,
had
huh?
you had on the t-shirt that day.
I did.
You had it on, yeah.
So, in
That's
case
pretty
there's any problem with the runners. In fact, first year I had a girl come up to be limping and she couldn't go anymore. I was at Echo, which was 7 miles. And she had a knee replacement 2 months before and she was doing a 10-mile walk.
That's somebody that's free to use.
Which of the following is an application of APRS?
There's a solid real time catch. That's what happens.
I don't hear anything.
Still reading.
It is a lot up there. I just saw real time. Time.
Well, don't do that. You
Oh.
stopped at the first one.
You're
I
right.
would say, alpha.
That sounds good to me. It's that real-time tactical and the map. Those are the key words.
Yeah.
Another thing on that map that Bob had up there, if you look over at the port, a lot of the ships have APRS tracking. So you can watch
Oh.
the ships on your map going in and out of the port out there, there's all kinds of boats and ships.
Okay.
Oh, we didn't quite go that
Big
far.
rays and all those up there, so you can actually track where ships are.
So what's the grading phase? Those.
I don't know.
subs?
Uh,
Is that a sub coming out of the
Yeah, those are all ships up there.
ship?
And the big D, that's Bob, the 3RDL, so. There's a weather WX there, the blue circle WX.
Yeah.
Left.
yeah, those,
Like these, like that, what's that?
It's a boat,
Okay.
Sweet Dreams and some other names, so those are ships. and
Oh,
boats.
I see. I see now.
Oh,
You got it up
there's
there.
one down here too.
Seabird.
Yeah.
A little-
That was whenever that snapshot was taken, it's.
Yeah, I don't remember.
So as the.
I was gonna update it. I don't know if I did or not.
So it's interesting to pop up
That's
to
really
see
cool.
what's.
Is that the stations that are located in Florida there? What is that?
Yes,
Yeah, those are
That's
probably,
here in
the
Florida.
weather stuff's probably
he
climate.
was asking if that's in Florida.
Yes, that's right here in Merritt Island.
Okay.
In fact, we're actually,
Yes.
uh,
Click on any one of those, like you clicked on Bob, you know, the D there, it gives you more information.
That's
Any
where are we?
one of those
Yeah.
gives you more.
we're right here,
That's.
Really?
right
Huh.
there.
Wow.
What kind of data can be transmitted by APRS?
Delta.
We got a lot of deltas today. Okay, PSK 31, talked about a little bit. It was one of the more popular digital modes in the HF. I don't know how much it's used today,
Quite a
but
bit,
is it?
I do PSK a lot,
Oh, okay.
that's my favorite.
All right. It stands for phase shift keying, and the 31 represents the 31 baud transmission rate. It also happens to be 31 hertz bandwidth.
So.
That's all right.
It uses phase shift keying as opposed to frequency shift keying, where you change the phase of the tone to represent the different characters. It uses what's called varicode as opposed to I don't know how many people are familiar with ASCII, which is a digital representation of letters and numbers and punctuation, where it's either 7 or 8 bits and it's fixed. Varicode is a variable length where it's anywhere from, I think, 3 bits up to like 8 or 9, depending on the character. And they oriented it such that the most frequently used symbols, letters or numbers, have the shortest codes. And the ones that you use least often have the longest codes. So it helped reduce the bandwidth.
How does that differ from Morse code?
So this is really keyboard to keyboard
Yeah,
operationally. So the free software package called FLDIGI, FLDIGI.
Oh,
Google Ad Define, this free application you get on your computer. And then you connect your computer up to your transceiver to to do that for you, but basically operationally is you're typing on a computer screen and that gets sent to whoever you're talking to and then they type back and you see it show up on your screen. So it's basically keyboard to keyboard
Mhm.
type thing. Different between this though and Packet, remember the Packet and the ARQ and all the error checking, PSK doesn't have any error checking. So you can get missing letters and missing words and depends on your reception, so you gotta interpret sometimes, or we ask the question to, you know, what you mean, what you say if someone fades out. Look at the bandwidth though, 31 hertz, how's that compared to CW? What
Oh,
was CW? You know, which we said was really narrow.
Yeah.
150 hertz is 31 hertz, so it takes
Yeah.
up very little space on the spectrum.
That's even narrower than FT8, which is 50 hertz.
One of the narrowest modes of communication.
So the spaceship keying, that's like real time. You type and automatically they see it on their keyboard. It's not like an email where,
It's like texting.
okay, texting on your computer.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so on the DFL Digi software.
Through your radio as opposed to through your cell phone.
Yeah, direct radio point to point. So if I don't have any power, or I don't, you know, don't have even any internet, as long as I got battery to run my laptop and battery to run my rig, I can still communicate this way. You know,
Okay.
it's
Oh, yeah, so you don't need.
internet independent because it's radio and radio.
Yes.
So it's great for
That's,
emergency communication stuff. too.
that's good. So we could do that.
So that's fun.
That's on the HF.
Yeah, you can do that in 10 meters.
So we could do that on
Because
the
you guys are licensed for 10 meter digital, I believe.
No,
Not on that, no, you'd have to have
computer.
an HF transceiver,
Okay.
yes. Something that operates on
What-
20 megahertz or 10 meters.
what does the abbreviation PSK mean?
Bravo.
Very good. Okay. Now, some of the newer digital modes that you can do with a handy talkie, some handy talkies, and they cost more, of course, is digital voice. And there's essentially three different types, factions, whatever. We'll mostly talk about digital mode radio or DMR, which is what the Chinese radios typically use. I think isn't there a Baofeng for $150 that does DMR?
I've got the 1701 and it was, when I bought it, it was $83 or $84.
And it does DMR.
It does DMR.
Okay. And it's digitized voice. So it's kind of interesting. The main thing is it does make use of the internet, or it can. You can go point to point with any of these digital voice modes. In fact, Jack and I did a thing with D-Star, which is another one we'll talk about, and actually talked to one another and sent pictures to one another while we were talking.
Same time. Start. Yeah, we'll get to.
That was more than an $83 radio.
Yeah,
Yeah.
The one thing they always point out as an advantage of DMR is that does time division multiplexing and can carry two channels at the same time through the repeater. I personally haven't seen where that's useful, but it's a marketing thing. And it says DMR allows communications over multiple repeaters interconnected via the internet. So if you have a DMR repeater and it is tied into a gateway to the internet, it can talk to other DMR repeaters around the world that are connected into the internet.
Or is this used very often? How popular is that?
DMR is pretty popular. I think because it's more open source and it's cheaper than the other alternatives, which is D-Star and Fusion. But you know, the handhelds and base station transceivers, mobile transceivers that support it cost more than your cheaper ones that are just straight FM.
Do any of you have used that?
Say that again?
Do any of you sitting at the table there use that?
Yeah. I haven't used DMR in quite a while. I think Dan does. I use D-Star because I have radios that support D-Star.
Yeah, I've never used DMR.
Okay.
I have one handy talkie that does DMR. I don't.
Yeah, I don't have any personal, I've never done DMR, but I've heard that it's quite challenging to get set up for the first time.
It's harder, yeah.
You either have to find somebody to give you a what? Some people refer to as a code plug, but talk to people that said that's the wrong name for it. But anyway, you have to load a file into the radio to make it work on whatever channels that you, or whatever talk groups that you want. And building that code plug from scratch is very challenging because there's a lot of steps in it. And the way the software is set up, the steps aren't in sequence. Everything is back and forth.
Okay, with that settles it. I'm out of that one.
I was gonna say, well, almost all these digital modes are little.
Anything confusing I can't do?
Well, it's actually not that bad, but it is a lot harder to do than D-Star. Now, I don't know anything about Fusion, so I don't know if that's better or worse, but D-Star is a lot easier to set up. The main difference between the three is in the case of D-Star, which is done by ICOM and Kenwood, they use codec chips, which are proprietary. So it's not truly open source, even though the D-Star standard is you need the codec chip to make it work, and that's not open source. Fusion is done by Yaesu, and again, it's kind of unique to Yaesu. Now, there are, I'm not sure if you call them gateways, but there are mechanisms on the internet, if you know how to do it, and I've never explored it, where you can interconnect between the different modes. So you can go from D-Star to Fusion or DMR and back if you know how to do the setup with the different types of gateways or reflectors, whatever they want to call them.
Probably the key thing, and wherever you live, is there a DMR or a D-Star or a Fusion repeater in range? You know, if you were gonna invest in ones, you can go point to point, but
Mhm.
funner is there a repeater? Is there a DMR repeater that you can hit locally?
Yeah, there's
Just curious how to read it.
K4DJN, I think, is a EMR repeater, and it's supposed to be here in Cocoa, and then there's one in Titusville as well. It's owned by the same club. I can't remember off the top of my
So
head.
recently, really D-Star and Fusion, there isn't really anything reach with a handheld.
There
Right.
are,
So,
yeah,
Not even with a base station. Not even with a base station.
There's a
It's 40
D-Star.
miles away.
so if I was gonna get into one of those three, I think that, to me, that would be the driving factor, which one can I reach from where I live?
But saving grace is all you need is a hotspot.
True.
For $30 or $40, you can do any one or all three.
So what you're doing there, you're bypassing the radio and going directly to the internet. And you're gonna pop out of the internet to a repeater somewhere else and still talk to someone.
Well,
I
you're
just
not bypassing the radio. You're going from the radio to the hotspot
Yeah, I'm
to the internet.
I'm going from my antenna.
It's just like it's a repeater.
Because the internet's involved, yeah, like more radio than internet. But
Right.
Do you have to have permission to go to these repeaters?
Some of those you have to register with there's
Yes,
coordinating organizations that over D-Star Fusion, DMR, probably you have to get like registered with them to get into their internet system. You can do
Okay.
your radio to the repeater, but unless you're registered with them, you can't get into the internet
Okay.
functionality, if you will. So yeah, most of them there's
So you really can't get on the internet for free.
there's no money
Oh.
involved. It's just a registration
Yeah.
of the call sign.
But not like having the internet
Yeah.
that comes into our house that we pay for every month.
No, not like that. No,
There's no
no.
cost. to
not
get
a-
back.
It's-
yeah,
all
you're
it
using
does-
somebody else's internet.
All it does is put your radio on the internet.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, there's no
It's not like I can.
costs involved that I'm
Right.
aware of at all.
You're talking to a repeater or a hotspot that's
Okay.
connected to the internet, so it's
Oh.
their internet that you're using.
Okay.
Uh, but out there on the internet, you can create what I call virtual channels.
Mhm.
In the case of DMR, they call them talk groups. In the case of D-Star, they call them reflectors. And I'm not sure what they call them on Fusion,
Yeah.
but they're all basically the same thing, where you can have a virtual channel and you can create one yourself.
Mhm.
There's lots of them out there for specific areas. For instance, I don't remember the DMR numbers, but on D-Star, Reflector 1 Charlie is worldwide. Reflector 37 Charlie is here.
Atlanta base or something, but
No, it's here, Florida. It's
was they talking 31 sure?
I'm trying to remember if it's East Coast or Central Florida, something like that. They have a net. I got on a couple times. There's one for different countries.
Mhm.
If you go search it, you can find a list of all the talk groups and the reflectors and whatever Fusion calls theirs. And it's just a matter of setting up a channel on your radio for that particular talk group or reflector.
So what happens is you might have a talk group or reflector, synonymous terms, but of 62 people connected to that group. So any of the 62 that talk, if you're sitting at your radio listening, you'd hear them,
Mhm.
but they might be from all over the US or
Right.
even Europe.
But nobody else is hearing it.
Yeah.
Whereas on a repeater, anybody that can hear the repeater hears it. With a talk group or a reflector, only the people that have joined that virtual channel hear it.
But like Bob said, there's regional ones, so like there's the Southern Alabama emergency reflector. Well, sometimes it's fun just to connect or go listen, and like especially they had some kind of weather incident going on or something. What are they saying there? So it's fun to go listen and I mean it's talk as well to other people, but somewhere either on the front end, the back end, or both, you're using the radio, but the internet's always in between.
So you have to remember this convoluted description of a talk group is a way for groups of users to share a channel at different times without hearing other users on the channel.
They say, remember that phrase?
It's an awful lot of words. Which of the following describes DMR?
I would say alpha.
Okay. That's not what I consider its most distinguishing feature, but for some reason they're hung up on.
Well, that's the answer.
What is a talk group on a DMR repeater?
That would be Bravo.
Yeah. So they try to fool you with A, saying it's a group of operators sharing a common interest. That could be true, but it's not necessarily true.
Right.
You could join the talk group and have no interest at all. Okay, WSJTX, we talked about a little bit. It's a software suite done by Joe Taylor. And another guy by the name of Frank, forgot his first name. Where it does some amazing stuff as far as being able to decode signals out of noise. In some cases, when you look at the waterfall display, you can't even see the signal, and it's able to decode it. You know, down 21, 22 dB down. It's like I said, it's got a lot of different modes. The Earth, Moon, Earth one, which they think they call bounce or echo, excuse me. Meteor scatter, which is MSK 144. And we talked about that earlier, where if you're lucky enough to have the right conditions and meteor trails, and you get a few seconds to 30 seconds or something like that.
Up to 2 minutes, right?
That's what they claim. I guess somebody must have done it for that long once. Probably a big meteor. And weak signal propagation beacons. There's beacons around the world that send out signals, so you can kind of get some idea what propagation is depending on what beacons you can hear. And there's a listing for all the beacons all around and what the frequencies are. Oh, there's a listing of all the different modes that are part of the current WSJTX. The difference between FT4 and FT8 is FT8 uses 8 tones to represent a symbol. FT4 uses 4 tones. FT4 cycle time is half of what FT8 is, so it's a faster mode, but it can't decode as weak a signal. So it's possibly better for contesting if you're looking to get the most number of contacts. With FT8, you have a better chance of getting more DX or distant contacts. I've never, let's see. You ever used JT4965? I think I played with JT9 once. And I've never done meteor scatter. It does support whisper, which is what most of these beacons do. And it's also what, if you're familiar with the what's getting popular, the Pico balloons, and they transmit on whisper, and you can track the balloons.
You're using the term whisper for that WSP.
I was thinking the same thing.
It's weak signal propagation reporter. We just call it whisper, WSPR.
Okay.
Which also works because it's very low powered, so. Whisper.
That's why they use it on the balloons, because they don't have a lot of power. They have very small solar cells. So,
Those are like these weather balloons,
huh?
weather balloons.
No. Pico balloons are like 3-foot balloons. Weather balloons are rather large. And the Pico balloons operate in the 45 to 50,000 foot range,
Okay.
where it's very, very, very cold. And sometimes they shut down because lack of sunlight, depending on where they're at, because they go around the earth. The Melbourne Club has, it's been 2 or 3 weeks ago, had a launch of 5 or 6. Only one was successful. And I believe it made it, I haven't tracked it in a while, all the way around. Last year, the same guy from Space Hobbies, which is supporting it and supplying the material, they did one that went around at least 4 or 5 revolutions of the Earth.
And that's just strictly propelled by the currents of aircraft.
Right.
It can go any direction globally.
Gets in the jet stream,
Zigzag or whatever the jet stream does, yeah.
140 miles an hour for a little flimsy balloon.
Yeah.
So you track at that speed at the time smartphone. Yeah. Whisper thing's really interesting just because it's uh, like if you had 2 or 3 antennas, talking HF in particular, but and you can buy like little whisper transmitters for $150 or something, it's like that big, and you hook up to your antenna. But if you had 3 antennas, all the same time within an hour period, some because propagation changed right along over days, but you could put up one antenna to see who hears you. And so amazing is most times it's a couple hundred milliwatts, less than a watt. You got 5 watts out of your head, it's like half a watt, and you'll see the beacons hear you in Europe.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, well, I can be heard there. But anyway, it's a test for propagation with that antenna. But if you switch a different antenna, well, what comes up? Which is better than 3? Or one antenna configured differently. You can do it, within the same couple hour period where the propagation itself
Right.
doesn't change. That's kind of fun to mess with.
And that's the purpose of the beacon is just the opposite on who you can hear, not who hears you. So you can kind of see because propagation isn't bidirectional. You can have very good propagation transmitting and not be able to receive, and vice versa. It's not always the same. It's very unpredictable. There's a whisper map. It was a snapshot from some beacon. Can't exactly tell where it is, somewhere over in the middle of Europe. And all the stations are reported hearing that beacon. So you can see it got halfway around the world anyway.
Different map sites, but like WSPRnet.org, like WSPRnet.org is one you see the map and tell you
That's cool.
something.
So which of the following operating activities supported by digital mode software in the WSJTX software suite?
Delta,
We have another Delta?
Mhm.
Oh, big on Deltas. What's that?
like Delta.
Oh, let's
Okay,
skip that. You think that was Bravo?
Yeah. So look, the other answer is, it's not wideband.
It's not wideband. And it's not digital slow scan TV.
no,
And it's not an 8-channel multiplex mode for FM repeaters. Is there such a thing? I guess you could,
8-channel multiplex.
but you have to.
I gotta be, they could sort it out somehow. I don't know. But it's not a TV.
Pretty narrow channels.
Yeah.
You get 8 and 15 kilohertz.
Yeah, it would be.
Okay. Then there's also mesh networks. I don't know how popular they claim it's becoming popular. I don't know that there's any in our area that I've heard of. But essentially, you can take a commercial router, brain fart, and modify the firmware and put it on, use it in the amateur bands. Most of them are in that 2.4 or 5 gigahertz anyway. Somehow up the power a little bit and interconnect them with other routers and form a mesh network for amateurs. Now, the commercial stuff will already let you set up and make a mesh network with normal routers, at least a lot of them, and with multiple ones, usually like in your house or something, or a building fairly large, and you can put multiple routers and interconnect them. So depending on which one's closest, it's a signal that you get picked up and they switch you around as you move. And that's kind of the way the mesh networks work. There's redundancy. So if you don't make a connection, this one drops out, whatever, it'll find another path from point A to point B. So it could be very useful for high-speed emergency communications if you had one set up and it works. And of course, they don't use the internet to interconnect them. They do it with, I guess, direct line of sight transmission. So it means you need to have them fairly close and a lot of them to cover a wide area.
Use those like satellite dish, like that. Round.
Mhm.
They were talking about here in the county, the Brevard County amateur radio emergency people in Ticeville primarily wanted to try to play with this with Indian River. Dave was talking about this, our technical guy in the club, and so between River of Life Church and Ticeville, get the Wi-Fi equipment, change the code, whatever they call it, firmware,
Mhm.
and get a dish antenna on the roofs and see if we can do direct communication. That start to build this kind of a thing, because everything else is out.
Yes.
You can support that equivalent with batteries, and you got direct line communication. So nothing's really happening yet, but they toyed with the idea.
Yeah,
Mm.
it might happen. So which of the following best describes an amateur radio mesh network?
Alpha,
Very good. Commercial Wi-Fi with modified firmware. Okay, so we talked about packet radio. Your normal Wi-Fi is packet. FT8 is essentially sending packets of information, a very complicated packet. APRS is another one of the digital modes for sending location information and some other stuff, possibly weather, text. PSK31 is like a keyboard to keyboard mode that uses phase shift keying to do the modulation.
By the way,
Uh,
APR,
let's go back to the APRS. Can you send maps? Is this maps included on that? Oh, yeah, it says with mapping.
Yeah,
Okay.
right, the applications that you can use to track it, like the picture I showed, will bring up a map and show you the location of all the reporting stations that it picks up. The APRS transmitters, when you set them up, they send information to try to remember what it is on my hotspot. Something like aprs.info or some internet gateway that is where it gets consolidated.
the USA is a standard APRS frequency. I think it's 144.39. You could dial that in on your handheld and you can hear data. There's a bunch of tones. You hear that, especially if they get that one on top of the space center. Discuss about this, but you might hear activity in 144.39. You can't interpret it. You don't have to. You can buy, I think you can buy external terminal node controllers, little things like this. Plug it into your mic or speaker jack and actually have it decode somehow.
Oh,
If you wanted to play with APRS on a handheld, you can Google that kind of stuff. But the frequency is 144.39 for local actual APRS data. You can at least hear it. I'm just curious what it sounded like, but
We talked about DMR, or digital mobile radio, which lets you time multiplex two signals. What talk groups were, with that nice long definition. WSJTX software and all the different modes. FT8 being the most popular of the digital modes. And I think that was true. I think that's still true today. And mesh networks and how to modify commercial routers and connect them in a mesh.
Those are the contracts that I've made